Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at Morphy's with an artifact that I think does a really good job of explaining why the United States dropped nuclear weapons on Japan at the end of World War II. This is a very last-ditch Japanese bayonet. It is so last-ditch that it's actually what's referred to as a pole bayonet. It has no way to be attached to a rifle. It is made entirely to be fitted to a stick or a bamboo pole and used as a spear. And the Japanese were actively planning to use this sort of thing in the defense of the home islands of Japan against the inevitable American amphibious assault. By 1945, the Japanese civil defense system had concluded that they had 28 million civilians capable of military service. They did not have 28 million rifles, but they were going to make things like this. Let me show you up close. Sorry for the interruption. Just want to say that today's video is brought to you by Headstamp Publishing, with an extensive catalog of books on all sorts of interesting and esoteric small arms, everything from World War II small arms to Imperial Japanese swords to the earliest of revolvers and Cold War battle rifles. There is something at Headstamp for every firearms enthusiast. Check it out. Links in the description text below. All right, I want to start with an earlier bayonet. This is already considered a last-ditch Japanese bayonet, or the formal term would be a substitute standard Type 30 bayonet. There is no fuller in the blade. Manufacture has been greatly simplified. The tang is no longer this nice curved hook quillion. Now it's just a square block there. But they still. Well, this isn't all rounded, this is flat-sided, but it's still got a bit of a pommel shape to it. And then it gets a bit worse. You can see they then got rid of all of the shaping on the back of the pommel there. So that's a more last-ditch bayonet. And things continue to deteriorate. You then get to models like this one, where they're not even shaping the bottom quillion. It's now just a rectangular block, and frankly, you're lucky that they still drill the hole for the muzzle of the rifle. But this is still a fully functional bayonet. It will fit onto a rifle, and you know what? I don't want to get stabbed by that. It may be simple, but it's still going to do the job as a weapon. And it's from there that we finally get to what's considered a pole bayonet. So they've got this rectangular piece that now has two holes in it, and there is no way to fit this to a rifle. There's no groove cut here for a bayonet lug. There's no button. It's just two wooden side plates held in place with rivets. And these two holes are drilled to basically give you a way to lash this to a pole. It's interesting to look at the profile of the blade from the back here. You can see that the entire blade is actually made from a wedge-shaped piece of steel. So the blade is sort of sharpened here, but they started with a wedge shape, presumably to save material. You can see the bottom here before they start, before it comes down to a blade. The bottom is significantly narrower than the top. This is arsenal marked. This is the Jinsen arsenal, which was in Korea. There were also examples of these made at Mukden in Manchuria, and a very few, I think there's like one or two known from the Nagoya arsenal on the home islands. This is serialized. There you go. There's a serial number and a series number. Known serial numbers go up to like 38,000. They made quite a lot of these. And at this stage in the war, frankly, it's a little surprising that you do get a scabbard and a frog for it, but it's a canvas frog stitched together, and then the scabbard is made of two very thin pieces of wood held together with wrapped and lacquered twine. A little bit of a metal protective end cap there, but this is a very fragile, very low-cost sheath. At the beginning of the war, they were making bayonet scabbards that were the equal of anyone in the world. Very nicely shaped pressed steel leather frogs, and that deteriorated to this point, by this point, to lacquered wood and twine. I do want to point out here, before people take this to be, how ridiculous were the Japanese sort of thing, it's worth remembering that the British were considering something pretty darn similar in 1942. When it looked like Germany was actually going to be landing on Great Britain. The British were considering pikes. I have actually seen a home guard mace that is basically a 4-foot stick with a big wad of barbed wire on the end of it. That's not too far off from this. I think the difference, though, is that the British, I don't know that very many British would have actually made mass charges with pikes into German machine guns, where the Japanese absolutely would and did. There were a number of assaults late in World War II where, not even all that late necessarily, Saipan, Okinawa, places where the Japanese made large bonsai-style attacks with bayonets on poles. They generally weren't these, because these hadn't been developed by that point in the war, and these never got out to the outer islands. By the time these were being made, the Japanese basically had no way to resupply those outer islands. But soldiers were taking regular bayonets and fixing them to poles and charging American positions with those things. It really is a sobering thought to consider the repercussions of actually going to war in the modern age with sharp metal sticks, essentially. But that is what the Japanese government was perfectly happy to do. Well, maybe not happy, perfectly willing to do to fight back the potential American invasion of the home islands. So really have to consider all aspects of what went into the decision to use nuclear weapons at the end of World War II. Anyway, this is a fantastic example of a very, very late war artifact from Japan. You normally do not see them in condition this nice with the scabbard and the frog and everything. So big thanks to Morphes for making this one accessible to me to film for you guys. Hopefully you got something out of the video. Thanks for watching.